Even though One Piece is filled with thrilling battles and exciting action sequences between strong characters, some of the fights we are most excited about we never actually get to see. But what actually makes the off-screen fights in One Piece so intriguing, and how can they create so much hype in the community? Fighting is an essential part of the One Piece manga, since despite of its vast world and complex storyline, at the base of it all, it is still a shonen manga, and fights are the main reason many of us got into One Piece in the first place. Badass characters with devil fruit powers ranging from fantastic to straight out weird, as well as the introduction of additional power tiers such as Haki and Awakenings, have not only kept the action alive, but much rather developed it further and made it even more capturing. Only as the story progressed further and further, and also the readers slowly grew older, did One Piece start to fascinate with more mature stylistic elements, such as politics or emotional and moral conflicts. But it also allowed Oda to increasingly make use of a very different type of battle: off-screen fights. What I'm talking about here are epic battles and duels that we never actually get to see, but are only hinted at by characters in the story. These kind of fights evolved to become an essential part of Oda's world building by having a significant impact on the story of One Piece. These showdowns shape the flow of events and therefore also the path Luffy and his crew take on their journey to Raftel. While some of these fights are not shown to us simply to not disturb the flow of the storyline, they are often also deliberately used by Oda as a tool to create hype and suspense. But how exactly does he manage to do that so well? And why do we love these fights so much? Off-screen fights work so well as a stylistic element in the One Piece story because they fulfill a handful of purposes at the same time that only get clear once you take a moment to really think about them. Let's start with some of the more obvious ones. First of all, off-screen fights allow for Oda to integrate epic clashes into the story without having to actually show them. Now, this might seem obvious at first glance, since it is literally the definition of off-screen, but how powerful this really is becomes clear when you look at how popular these kinds of fights actually are. After all, some of them have gotten a lot more attention than fights we actually got to witness. To achieve this, Oda first gives us a glimpse at characters' powers to let us get an idea of what they are truly capable of. Next, he puts this character against someone who's also perceived as strong or mysterious. He then uses this piece of information to put a certain expectation into its reader's head. All he now has to do is to announce that this clash took place at some point somewhere in the world and let the reader's imagination do the rest of the work for him. We are actually the ones who really make these unseen battles as great as they are, simply because Oda allows them to happen as we want to imagine them in our minds by not showing them to us at all. A great example of this is the fight between Garp, Sengoku and Shiki. We were only fed little bits of how powerful these three characters must have been in the prime of their days, only to learn later on that the three actually fought each other. Now, we do not have any idea how this fight really went down. It is possible that Garp and Sengoku simply hit Shiki over the head after 10 seconds and the whole thing was over in an instant. But with the information Oda gave us, what we all have in our minds is an epic fight on the highest level, with all three of them going all out with the devil fruits and Haki. This allows Oda to save himself the trouble of illustrating such a fight without making it any less capturing. And this also directly leads into my second purpose, which is building expectations for later fights in the story. When hearing of the power of certain characters and whom they fought in the past, we can't wait to actually see them in action in the future. Next to the Yonko, one of the most prominent examples for this is probably the clash between the two admirals Aokiji and Akainu on Punk Hazard. We first hear about their battle from Jinbei in Fishman Island, who lets us in on the background of the fight, namely control over the Marines. Jinbei then tells Luffy that the fight lasted an incredible 10 days, and that even though both were more or less equal in strength, in the end Akainu defeated Aokiji. Later on, when the Straw Hats actually arrive at Punk Hazard, we can see the consequences of that fight. The island's entire climate and weather had been changed completely by the battle, turning it into half icy desert, half Mordor. With the knowledge that two awakened Logia users clashed here, we can't help but yearn for the day we finally get to see Akainu and Aokiji go full out with their powers. This example also connects to the third purpose of off-screen fights, namely the driving of unexpected game-changing events. The fight between these two admirals determined the entire structure of the Marines, one of the most powerful and influential entities in the One Piece world. This unseen fight was the source of the hard course taken up by the Marines after the war, that once again introduced them as a worthy opponent even when entering the new world. Another great example for this is obviously Shanks stopping Kaido from getting involved into the War of the Greatest, which would most likely have changed the outcome of it completely. Another one that comes to mind is the continuation of the fight between Blackbeard and Ace that finally led to Ace's defeat and therefore to the start of the war itself. All this was made possible by fights that we never actually got to see more than a glimpse of. And this brings me to the fourth and last purpose of off-screen fights in One Piece, which is at least as important as all the others: power scaling. Power scaling is something very popular in shonen manga and is often introduced in the story itself, most prominently seen in Dragon Ball. While undoubtedly the fights we actually see in the story function as a way of power scaling too, they are often tailored to the Straw Hat crew. Also considering the sometimes rather unusual circumstances when it comes to fights of the crew, a real comparison between characters is kinda difficult. Is, for example, Eneru weaker than Doflamingo just because Luffy needed 2 years of training and Gear 4th to defeat the one but not the other? Not necessarily in my opinion. Luffy being made of rubber simply gave him an advantage in these special circumstances. As a result, many of the fights often don't really offer us a very clear picture of a character's strength in relation to the entirety of the One Piece world. Off-screen fights, on the other hand, simply state the outcome of a fight between two characters. While this doesn't mean that special circumstances cannot occur here as well, it is usually implied by Oda that it was a heads-on clash, power versus power. We expect Garp to be a strong character since he was able to take on the likes of Shiki and Roger. We expect Blackbeard to be incredibly strong, for seemingly effortlessly being able to defeat the revolutionaries in Baltigo, as well as the Whitebeard pirates in the Payback War. Additionally, he also seems to have clashed with Shanks before, and was seen as a threat by him from very early on in the story. Apart from the short glimpse of the fight with Ace, we do not have any idea of what Blackbeard is truly capable of. Yet we still have a very good idea in which league he plays, mostly through those battles that we have never actually seen. So we have now seen that off-screen fights in One Piece serve 4 different purposes: integrating battles without having to actually show them, building expectations for future fights, allowing for unexpected events to influence the flow of the story, and functioning as a tool for power scaling characters we haven't seen in full action yet. While these purposes alone show us why off-screen fights are so relevant for the story, we still haven't fully explored why they fascinate us so much. So, what actually makes them so intriguing? Again, from my perspective, there are 4 main reasons for the power of this storytelling method. The first one is basically the combination of the previous points. The power scaling of off-screen fights, combined with the increasing knowledge of the One Piece world and the anticipation of seeing those characters in action, can be summarized as a tool of character construction. The most relevant example for this at the moment might be Kaido. Knowing how he decimated Gekko Moria as well as Kid, Apu and Basil Hawkins, even before coming to Wano, we had a very good idea of what Kaido might be capable of doing and what level he was operating on. This character construction is now slowly filled with details as we get to know more and more about Kaido's powers and character traits, which all in all allows for a more complete character design. The second reason off-screen fights are so intriguing is the One Piece community itself. No matter if it's a YouTube channel, forums, podcasts, or conventions, the community surrounding the story is filled with an overflowing amount of discussions, theories, reviews, and analysis. The enthusiasm and imagination of the fans is a central driver of the story. Thus, mysteries and unseen events are always a highly relevant topic in the community, and off-screen fights are probably one of the most discussed fields in all of these platforms. Thus, the One Piece community, or namely you guys, are what really makes these fights so special, and what makes them so much fun to think and talk about. Next is Oda's love for plot twists. And I think I will not have to explain this to you too much in detail, since you are all more than familiar with them. Oda simply loves to play with his readers' expectations, and the off-screen fights are no exception. The possibility that an event took place completely differently than we originally thought is what makes it so intriguing to talk and discuss about. An example here would be the general belief that Garp defeated Roger and captured him in the end. Only after a long time we actually learned that Roger turned himself in, being lethally sick anyway. Twists like that drive our imagination to come up with the most fantastic theories about unseen fights and events. And even if these turn out to be wrong, just coming up with theories and being proven wrong is what many people, including me, enjoy so much about One Piece. Last but not least, the fourth reason that makes off-screen fights in One Piece so intriguing is the mystery they create. Not really knowing how fights went down and what powers were used drives us mad with curiosity. How were the Blackbeard pirates able to win the payback war so easily? What is the secret to their power? What makes Kaido and Big Mom into such indestructible beings? And how will Luffy be able to rise to their level in the end? It is those mysteries surrounding strong characters' powers and traits that we haven't seen yet that are essential part of the story's success. Now, to illustrate these 4 points, let's look at the most prominent example for off-screen fights, and that is Shanks. He's one of the most hyped and intriguing characters in the story for a reason. He incorporates all the factors we have explored just now. To better understand this, let's take a look at the off-screen fights we know of that Shanks had so far. All of them are means of character construction for Shanks in terms of power scaling, anticipation, and twists. All of them are shrouded in mystery, and all of them have been discussed by the community so often and so throughout that it actually might be difficult for Oda to come up with a storyline that hasn't been speculated yet. Shanks stopped Kaido on his way to Marineford. But did they actually fight? And if yes, how strong is Shanks to come out of this whole thing unscathed? And did Shanks really fight Blackbeard? And again, if yes, did this make Blackbeard stronger than Kaido several years ago, since he was actually able to hurt Shanks? Also, Shanks is known to have had a rivalry with Mihawk, who is said to have been able to compete on his level. Did Shanks fight with all his might there? And if yes, how strong does that make Mihawk in comparison? All of these events make the community twitch with excitement every time we see Shanks do as much as sit on a rock reading a newspaper. All in all, this shows just how powerful and relevant off-screen fights are for the storytelling of Oda and how it has contributed a significant part to its success. To round things off, let's look at the most recent major off-screen fight we got in the story. The Revolutionary Army versus the two admirals Fujitora and Greenbull. Not only will it significantly hype up whichever side wins, it will also have a critical impact on the story. Additionally, it is the central setup for the Return of the Reverie arc in 2019 that has been announced recently by Oda. I hope I was able to lay out the importance of off-screen fights in One Piece to you guys, and show you which purpose they serve and which factors make them so intriguing and hype. Now, I have a question for you guys. Do you think there should be flashbacks to off-screen fights in One Piece, and why or why not? Share your thoughts on this in the comments below, and also feel free of course to share your opinion on any other aspect of this video. If you liked this video, please make sure to like, share, and subscribe to be notified for any future content of mine. At this point, I also want to thank Manish Garg for choosing this topic in the 100 subscriber contest, as well as everyone else who participated. I will definitely also tackle some of the other topics that were proposed in the future. Now, all that's left to do is wish you guys a great start into the new year, and I'm looking forward to seeing where we can take this channel in 2019 together. And as always guys, have a great week.